Hello and welcome to the Financial Future Guide. I'm your guy and I'm your guide. My name is Alex and today we're not in my usual room. In fact, we're in the basement of a different house. I actually moved recently, so I'm no longer blessed with the beautiful natural lighting that you used to see. Kinda took it for granted. Instead, I'm living somewhat underground, so I've had to set up a little makeshift lighting rig so I can record the videos. Anyway, today I want to talk about super investors. The likes of Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, Lee Lu, Michael Burry, a bunch of these investors that have done great things in their time. We're actually very blessed as a retail investor as we have the ability to see what they're buying on an occasional basis, 4 times a year to be exact. Now this is made possible through things such as 13F filings, where these investors actually have to disclose what they're holding at a particular time. So with this information, we can compare previous 13F filings and get an idea of what they've been buying, what they've been selling, what's new, what's gone, and it really does provide a little bit of insight as to what these investors are thinking. And even better, maybe we can learn a few things or even get a few stock ideas for ourselves. So that alone is a great reason for us to take a little bit of time and follow what these great investors are doing. But you may be wondering, how do I do that? Well, that's what I'm going to show you today. Now, if at any time in this video you enjoy the content, go ahead and hit like, subscribe. Remember, I'm your guy. Let's get started. Alright, so the first tool that we're going to look at today is Dataroma, and on their homepage they have the Super Investor Portfolio Updates, and these are updated every time a 13F filing is completed. So on the left here, we'll see the name of the super investor, for example, Bill Ackman, the name of his fund, Pershing Square Capital Management, and the fact that this was updated on 16th February 2021. So if we click on that, we're taken over here to this page, and we can see that this is for the period of the 4th quarter, and the stock seen below is what Bill Ackman was holding on the 31st of December 2020. So from this homepage, we can see that he has 7 stocks, and it also speaks to the percentage of their portfolio that this holding is. We got the number of shares he has held, the recent activity, and the reported price. This isn't the last price that Bill Ackman actually made these purchases at, nor is it his average price. Instead, it's actually the price that the stock closed at on the 31st of December, or the portfolio date up here. And finally, we also have the total dollar value of these holdings. If we look down the bottom here, they also have the sector analysis where they just kind of break it down into what percentage of the portfolio's holdings are in certain sectors. Anyway, heading back up here, we have a few options up here. We have the holdings that we're looking at right now. We have the activity. Clicking on that takes us to this page. And this is really cool because it actually compares previous 13F filings with current 13F filings. And by doing that, we can see the total amount of shares that have changed. And then Dataroma kindly gives this to us in a percentage basis of their overall position. So we can see that both in Q4 and Q3, Bill Ackman has been trimming these positions and he hasn't made any new buys or additions. Now, if I scroll down a little bit to find an example, here we have sell 100%. That obviously means that they've sold completely out of the position. And then down the bottom here is a buy. And that means that this is a new position in this particular portfolio. So in this example, Bill Ackman may have purchased Blackstone Group and sold it previously, but in Q4 of 2019, he did not own the company. So when we move into Q1 2020, Dataroma labels this as a buy as he's opening a new position. Heading back up to the top here, we have the options of buys and sells. As you can see right now, we're currently looking at both. But if all you're interested in seeing the buys, we can click on this here. And right away, we can see he hasn't made a purchase since the 2nd quarter of 2020. And if we want, we can head over to sells and we can see this as well. Heading back to the holdings section, this is another great thing I like. For instance, maybe you see this and you're interested in Starbucks. We can actually click on Starbucks as a company. So now we're looking at the page for a certain company. This is Starbucks. We got the ticker symbol here, SBUX. The company is considered to be consumer discretionary. And of the super investors that Dataroma tracks, 8 of them hold Starbucks in their portfolio currently. Now to see those 8 people, we can scroll down here. Up the top here, we got Bill Ackman again. And it also lets us know what these super investors are doing with Starbucks. So in this example, we saw 3 super investors reduce their position, 3 add to their position, and 2 made no changes at all. Much like the portfolio page, we can go ahead and look at the activity, and this gives us a little bit more information as the ownership only speaks to those who currently hold that position. So this is also a useful tool because you can see who has been buying and selling, and it will also show any super investors, for example, Jensen Investment Management, who sold out 100% of their position. So obviously they're no longer shown on the ownership section. So that's the portfolio and the company side of things. If we head back to the homepage, we have a few cool boxes that are very interesting to look at as well. We have the top 10 most owned stocks. Obviously, we got the likes of Facebook, Google, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Microsoft, Berkshire Hathaway, Amazon, MasterCard, etc. And we can go ahead and click on this. It'll give us a little bit more information. We can see that Facebook is held by 29 different super investors. One of those super investors happens to have that as 21.84% of their total portfolio. And of the $701 billion under management throughout all of the funds on this website, Facebook's total ownership would make up 1.982%. So this is a great place to go and get ideas for companies that you might potentially look to invest in. And from this page, again, we can click on these companies and see which investors are holding them. I think the next most useful boxes are down here. We have the top 10 buys of last quarter and the top 10 buys of the last 2 quarters. I really like this one over here, top 10 buys of the last quarter, as it gives me an idea of what these super investors were purchasing over the last few months. We can see that they've been loading up on Wells Fargo, Microsoft, Facebook, and Merck. And what I can then do from here is go and look at what the company was trading at during this 4th quarter. And if I make the assumption that the super investor was able to pick it up at its lows, I can kind of get an idea of where that particular super investor values that particular company. Now back at the homepage, there's one more thing I want to show you on Dataroma, and that's the S&P 500 grid. So right here, we're looking at a table of every single company in the S&P 500. We can see Facebook up here in the top left is the most held company by 29 super investors. So this is just another great way to look at what are the most owned companies within these super investors' portfolios. This is also cool here. We can click the last quarter buys, and similar to what we were looking at before, but in a different format, we can see Wells Fargo, Microsoft, Facebook, and Merck were the most popular companies amongst super investors within the S&P 500 in the last quarter. Now there are a few limitations of Dataroma. First of all, we don't exactly know what the size of the cash position that particular portfolio is holding. So although, for instance, they may say Facebook is 10% of their holdings, if you included the cash held within the portfolio, Facebook could end up being a smaller holding for them. I'll use Li Lu for the next example of one of the downsides of Dataroma. Now here we have 6 stocks that Li Lu held on the 31st of December 2020, and all of these companies are American companies, or at least American holdings of foreign companies. Now all the data that we see here is actually pulled from the 13F filing, which means that any non-US investments that are held within this portfolio are not displayed in this table and not accounted for a percentage of that portfolio. That's where this website Tikr comes in. Now this site is a little bit different. You do need to sign up for it. They don't currently charge anything. It is free to use. However, you do need to go onto a waitlist prior to being accepted onto the platform. Now this is still in beta, so I believe that's why they're not charging for it. This may actually become a paid service in the future. So over here we have Track Investing Gurus, similar to Dataroma. And what you'll notice is we don't have the name of the individual investor. Instead, we just have the name of their fund. So it's important that you know the name of the fund you're looking for the super investor that you're trying to track when using this website. So in the example of Li Lu, he is in charge of the Himalaya Capital Fund, so let's go ahead and click on that. And right away down the bottom we can see he has 7 holdings. If we flip back to Dataroma, just remember there was only 6, his largest holding being Micron, which is 47.52% of his total portfolio. We know that that's not entirely true. Micron here is only 21.19% of his portfolio. Li Lu's largest position, making up 55.4% of his holdings, is actually in BYD, which is a Chinese manufacturer of automobiles, battery-powered bicycles, buses, forklifts, solar panels, rechargeable batteries, trucks, etc. So this is a huge discrepancy between what we saw on Dataroma compared to what Himalaya Capital actually owns, where Micron makes up far less of the portfolio. Again, some of the data here is similar though. We can see the number of shares held by the fund, we can see the change in number of shares, and that is also reflected as a percentage of shares held. This is cool as well. They also have here percentage of shares outstanding held. So this tells us that Himalaya Capital actually holds 7% of the total amount of shares for BYD. Finally, we got the holding date, and we also have the filing report. notice here we have trade report. And as you can see for all these other companies, the other 6 that we saw previously on Dataroma had their information provided through the 13F. So this again is another great website that you can use to do some research into some of your favorite investors, get an understanding of their holdings and what changes they've been making, and often this can bring to light some possible investments that you may have never considered previously. Now obviously it goes without saying that you definitely should do all your own research prior to following these investors into these companies, even if they have an amazing track record. There is a delay between when we often receive this information and when it was filed. For instance, if we head back to Dataroma, we can see that Bill Ackman's information was updated on the 16th of February, which is more than 6 weeks later than the information we just reviewed. So go ahead and take a look at these 2 websites. I'll leave the link for both of them in the description. Play around with it, and I hope that you find a few investment opportunities for yourselves. Now that's all for today's video. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to see videos similar to this one. And tell your friends.